You're listening to theoutdoorstation.co.uk.
Welcome to a special review edition of the Book Club. I'm Andy Howell. Orland Press have sent us 3 of their new walking guides for 2007, and we've been so impressed with them that we felt if you were planning a walking holiday in the UK this summer, you may well be interested in one or more of these titles. The books cover the English coast-to-coast walk, various walks in the North West Highlands of Scotland, and a revised guide to the Cotswold Way National Trail. Let's start by talking about the new guide to the coast-to-coast walk, which runs for about 192 miles from St Bees on the Cumbrian coast until it finishes at Robbinswood Bay on the North Sea coast. And I guess one of the reasons this has become such a famous walk is that it runs through 3 of the most fantastic national parks in the UK, the Lake District, the Yorkshire Dales and the North York Moors. This guide's been put together by Martin Wainwright, who is the northern editor of The Guardian and a keen hill walker himself. A couple of months ago I spent an afternoon with Martin, and here he is talking in his usual infectious, enthusiastic way about walking the coast-to-coast trail.
They asked me to do the coast-to-coast walk, and possibly because my name's Wainwright, I'm not actually a relation of Alfred Wainwright, at least not, within many generations, but maybe they were sort of thought people would, think I was, sell more copies that way. But I loved it. I just loved it. If you haven't done the coast-to-coast, it's one of the finest long-distance walks in the country, and I say that not because it's necessarily all a mighty challenge. I mean, it is quite a major undertaking if you do the whole thing in one go. You need to allow, I would say, at least a fortnight, although there are sort of SAS people who've done it in like 48 hours, but I would say allow a fortnight and you'll have a couple of days off. But it's such a subtle walk. It starts from St Bees on the Cumbrian coast, near to the Sellafield Power Station, and it makes its way across through 3 national parks, the Lake District, the Yorkshire Dales and the North York Moors, to Robin Hood's Bay, a famous, very pretty place on the North Sea, on the Yorkshire coast. But in between these kind of famous highlights of the lakes and Swaledale and the North York Moors, there are fascinating other bits. There's the bit between St Bees and the lakes, which is the old industrial rim of Cumbria. There's a strange, eerie section from Shap, where the motorway, the M6 goes up, to Kirby Stephen, where you go across unfrequented limestone plateau, which is just full of prehistoric remnants, and there isn't much to see, to be honest. I mean, apparently in prehistoric times it was like Manchester, but there's no sign of that now. But the thought that these shadowy figures lived on this wild, unfrequented areas is real, sort of makes the hairs go up on your back. And then between Richmond in North Yorkshire and Mount Grace Priory, there's a fascinating agricultural area. And when Wainwright did it back in the 70s, he had to walk on roads for I think 8 miles on that stretch, and now none of it is on roads because although the coast-to-coast walk is not a national trail, it isn't a recognised footpath. It's just one man's creation, and it's walked by a lot of people, so it's become a distinct path. The footpath officers, particularly in North Yorkshire and Cumbria, have done a marvellous job of working with farmers, and the farmers, as a result, have benefited. And there's one place where you go. You tend to go along the edges of fields, so you're sort of constantly doing right angle turns. And there's this hedge, and the farmer's got a little kind of wooden and glass display board, a bit like you find in a village where the parish council notices are, And it's addressed to coast-to-coast walkers and other walkers, saying, I hope you're enjoying this bit. Is there anything else I can do? You might be interested to know that the field you're passing by at the moment is, organic, whatever. Just great. And there's a little notebook with a pen attached, with a barrow attached, saying, please leave your comments. And you think when you consider there was a time when a farmer was somebody with a shotgun, doing what you're doing on my land.
Indeed, how times have changed. Martin writes beautifully throughout this book, not just in the introduction, but across 15 chapters, each of which cover one day's walk, although he does include alternative stopping places for those who want to take a little bit longer. It's full of wonderful little essays on features and places of particular historical or landscape interest, and of course it's got all the usual information at the end about organisations that provide advice and information on travel and accommodation. Fantastic book and well worth a look. Our next book is from our old friend Chris Townsend, A Guide to Walks in the North West Highlands. I spoke to Chris a couple of days ago and started by asking him about the aim of the book. This isn't just another book about Munros and tops.
Oh no, not at all. In fact, there are no Munros in it, except where they get an occasional mention. And there's really two reasons for that. I mean, one is that obviously the Munros are well covered elsewhere. There's plenty of books, with details of them. And the other is that the North West Highlands in particular has got fewer Munros than the other mainland areas of the Scottish Highlands, far fewer. But it has got lots of other hills and interesting features. So I wanted to concentrate on these. It is an area where I think it would be a complete waste to go up there and just find the few Munros there are and then depart and never see anything else.
It strikes me that this would be a particularly helpful book for someone exploring Scotland for the first time.
Oh, definitely, yes. One of the things I tried to do with the selection of walks is to show the variety, so that if you do a number of them, you have got hills, not Munro height, but there are ascents in there. There's also coastal walks, walks around lochs, walks to waterfalls, walks where geology is the main interest. And the idea very much was to show, the huge variety of landscape that you get in the area, so that if you were coming up, for a first visit, you could pick a few of these walks and get a huge amount of different experiences from them.
You say in the introduction that the Northwest is a land that inspires superlatives, and it certainly does. With all of that wonderful landscape to draw on, it must have been pretty difficult to narrow this down to just 24 walks.
Oh, very much, yes. I mean, I started off by looking at the maps and listing all the possibilities, which would have produced many volumes rather than just one. And then it was a question of selecting from those. And to some extent it was done, as I said before, I wanted to get the variety. So there was only going to be a certain number of summits, a certain number of coastal walks. So I then had to select from those. I mean, some of the walks were obvious ones. I knew immediately they would have to be in. But others weren't. And I also spent a lot of time, a year ago in fact, going around redoing walks, doing new walks, considering whether things should be in or not, doing walks and then thinking maybe too much of that was in a forestry plantation, I won't put it in after all.
I guess you could make a great holiday by clustering together a number of these walks, and they'd be accessible either by car or even by public transport.
Certainly, yes. I mean, public transport is okay for quite a few of them. Some of them you'd have a bit of a walk at the start, because they start in fairly remote places. But yes, although they're all presented as day walks, some of them in fact could quite easily be done as overnight walks with a camp en route or a night in a bothy or a hostel, and some of them could be linked together as well to make longer routes.
I know some of these walks, and for example the walk from Kinlochhorn to Barrisdale and then back over the tops and down to Kinlochhorn again is a fantastically varied walk.
Oh, it is. Absolutely superb, and in very remote country. And again, it's one of those walks that, I've presented it as a day walk, and you can do it quite easily in a day. But you can always go as far as Barrisdale, where there's accommodation and a campsite, and stay there, and then finish the walk the next day.
And for those who are going to be exploring the Highlands for the first time, what's the best time of the year to go, Chris?
If you look at averages, you're probably talking about May and October. But mostly, May tends to be before the midges come out, certainly before they get bad. And generally you get sharper, clearer light than later in the summer when it gets hazy and muggy. And in October again, you can get those, wonderful crisp autumn days with the autumn colours. The climate is so unpredictable, it's very hard to say.
This is a book that's just packed full of content, and you've obviously tried very hard to incorporate history, geology, flora and fauna within each of the walking descriptions themselves.
Oh, yes. And of course, it's something, that I'm very interested in. I've always enjoyed learning about the places where I've walked, wanting to know about natural history, geology, history, and everything else. So I'm very keen to put that across to people. I do think you get a much greater appreciation of a landscape if you have, some understanding of these subjects.
I think this book is going to do very well. It's certainly going to be very helpful to anyone looking to explore the North West Highlands for the first time. As Chris said in the interview, there's a lot of variety here. High walks, low walks, forest walks, coastal path walks, and walks to help us through generally every kind of weather condition as well. We're talking about the area to the north and the west of the Great Glen, and including the island of Skye. This is the area generally reckoned to be the last true wilderness in the UK. Certainly worth exploring and seeking out. The book's got all the usual kind of information at the back and has a particularly helpful glossary of Gaelic and Scots words for those of us that have such trouble with Scottish place names. Our final book is a guide to the Cotswold Way National Trail and has been written by Anthony Burton. And I've not been able to catch up with Anthony, which is a shame because this is another wonderfully written and beautifully produced book. Anyone who's been to the Cotswolds will know what a picturesque area of the country it is. But I think few people will appreciate just the depth and breadth of the history that we'll touch upon as we walk through the hills. There's everything here from Neolithic burial grounds to stories about the Renaissance, the English Reformation, English Enlightenment. This was the area where William Morris and the Pre-Raphaelites set themselves up and to work against the frustrations and the tyranny of the Industrial Revolution, for example. A wonderful book. Anthony walks it from north to south, starting at Chipping Camden and then walking for about 100 miles south-west and finishing in the city of Bath. He breaks the walk down into 15 useful sections, although the walk can be comfortably walked within 7 days or so. But he suggests in the introduction, and he may well be right, that there is so much in each of these walks that you may well want to take longer over it. National Trail Guides, the Cotswold Way, certainly well worth recommending, and perhaps a more gentle, more rural, more pastoral long-distance trail for the summer. So there you have it, 3 excellent books with which to explore over the coming months. Each guidebook sells for £12.99 and they share the same letterbox format, making them easy to slip into the map pocket of a jacket or the side pocket of a pack. Each is crammed full of the usual information about public access, public transport and accommodation, and each of the day walks is well illustrated with a series of legible excerpts from the 1 to 25,000 OS map series. What really sets each of these guides apart from others on the market is the sheer quality of writing, which is a delight throughout. If you have a favourite book you'd like to tell us about, or there's an author you think we should interview here on the book club, then get in touch and tell us all about it. Indeed, if you have any feedback on the Outdoor Station podcast, then we'd love to hear from you. Here's Bob to tell you how to get in touch.
You can now leave us a message anytime on 020 8133 9434. That's 020 8133 9434, and that's at normal UK rates.
Thanks, Bob. Now don't hesitate to get in touch with us. It really is good to hear from you. We welcome your feedback. Well, that just about wraps up this podcast. I'm Andy Howell, and as ever, take care and happy hiking.
This independent programme has been brought to you by The Outdoor Station, the exciting new way to see and hear free information about the outdoors world. If you're a blogger, or if you have a website, you can now incorporate any of these podcasts directly to your site, completely free. Visit our website, theoutdoorstation.co.uk, for more information.